The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. From hot dogs to cool kitties, this is Darkside of the Pooch.
Dr. Rab, what you got? I'll never get tired of that. Someone called me the other day. This is Darkside of the Pooch with Dr. Rab Stewart, Rossburg General Hospital. Someone said, you need to make some different sounds at the beginning of the show. And I said, I don't know. I said, the best show we've ever done is when we did, what does Rab sound like when for cats? Remember when we did the whole cat thing? Give me an angry cat, give me a happy cat. We may have to do that with a dog at one of our shows. Dr. Rab Stewart, Rossburg Animal Hospital, Rossburg Vet on Twitter, and of course also on the Facebook of the Rossburg Animal Hospital, 208-0301, 208-0301. Of course, Darkside of the Pooch runs every Monday, noon and 8 right here on Tony Kurre Radio, fresh and live, and anytime on Spotify. Just search Darkside of the Pooch or Tony Kurre Radio. And it's always brought to you by Ed's Pet World for any exotic pet you want. Chinchillas, ferrets, talking birds, bearded dragons, tarantulas, caiman alligators, you name it. If you're looking for an exotic pet, they're going to do everything they can to make sure you get it, and they're going to take care of it for you. It's Ed's Pet World. I've been good friends with Seth now for about 30 years. He also loves toys. So if you're looking for some collectible toys in the box, Star Wars stuff, collectibles, whatever you got, check it out. You find some stuff in your attic, take it to Ed's Pet World. They'll buy, sell, and trade. It's Ed's Pet World, around for nearly 50 years right there in Homewood. It's a staple, and very happy to have them as a sponsor here of Darkside of the Pooch. What's going on at the Rossburg Animal Hospital here in the month of July? Anything interesting happening?
There's a lot of coughing dogs around. I don't know what other parts of the metro area are seeing, but we have seen an explosion of upper respiratory infection in dogs. And it's really a lot like when people get an upper respiratory infection or even a respiratory infection. The symptoms are really similar. Some people, they say, I think my dog's trying to throw something up, but they're not trying to throw up. They're coughing. And you swab these dogs just like you would have yourself swabbed for COVID or for strep or for flu. We can swab the back of their throat, and we also swab kind of the pink part of their eyes, their conjunctiva, because a lot of the viruses are shed through the conjunctiva of the eyes. So we've cultured some common bacterias, but we have also cultured canine influenza, which is, interesting. I haven't seen a whole lot of flu cases up until now in my career. I've seen some, but never this many. So it's interesting. So I would just caution everybody that if you do have a dog at home that has been around other dogs and comes down with a cough, you probably want to call your veterinarian and isolate them, because usually these types of infections, no matter what they are, bacterial or viral, they're usually pretty infectious to other dogs. So if you have other dogs in the house, or your neighbor has a dog, or your friends, the affected pet needs to be isolated so we can cut down on the transmission.
That is really, really interesting. Have you ever seen this happen before?
Well, I have not personally, but flu outbreaks happen. And they can usually be traced back to areas that have had a lot of horse racing or dog racing in the past, which we have had here. So there are some parts of the country that are not affected by this, but the Southeast has a heavy flu population. So it's something that we vaccinate for. We recommend they get the flu vaccine every year, but something that we have not seen a lot of positive cases of, at least in my career up until recently, last week or so. Yeah,
we've talked about this a lot on this show because of COVID and the pandemic we've been going through over the last 3 years. And is there a possibility that we're getting COVID from our animals, or our animals getting sick from our human beings? Is that something, the longer we live together, and obviously domesticated dogs have been around for thousands of years, but is that something that kind of concerns you a little bit, that eventually we will start seeing some transmittable diseases between pets and their owners?
Well, I mean, we know that they have some. We know that there's, I don't know. I mean, there's probably more than we even realize, but there's a lot of documented things that are considered what we call zoonotic, and that's just a medical term or scientific term that means a disease that's transmitted to people from animals. One that's, I guess, probably the most recent one, and there's still some, I guess, digging to be done outside of COVID. I think most people know about COVID, but the norovirus, which is a GI virus, causes vomiting and diarrhea in people. Recently, there's been some possible indication that is something that can be passed back and forth between dogs and people. I think that there's still a lot of work to be done, but there's at least enough suspicion that's possible. So, that's kind of a new one. I don't know if it's actually new or if it's just we're finding out about it. Maybe this has been something that has been transmittable for a long time, but we're just now, putting the puzzle together. Who knows? But that's one that's kind of newer, I would say.
By the way, when you use words like zoonotic, I get excited for some reason. I get turned on. You become the sexy Rossbridge Animal Hospital veterinarian when these uses big words. That and anal glands.
Well, big words, I guess, could work. I'm not really sure. We'd have to ask our female listeners that.
You should use that with Mrs. Rab later on tonight and see if that works for you. Let me know what's going on.
I'll let you know. Maybe you could use them too.
Info@TonyCurryRadio.net. Info@TonyCurryRadio.net. Believe it or not, I do check our emails, don't I? I check our emails, yes. And we get email questions every single week. We got a bunch of mutt mail we'll get into here. I did want to get into a story, though. I thought this was amazing. Monster the dog fell overboard in Galveston Bay, Texas last week. It's a pit bull, and it fell overboard. The owner hadn't realized that it had gone overboard until about 10 minutes after it happened, and he thought his dog was gone. And they found the dog through a Facebook page about 3 days later. The dog swam 6 miles back to shore and ended up about 13 miles away from the homeowner's place. And our first question, Bonnie in Austin, Texas, which is right around Galveston Bay, wants to know, what's the most amazing pet lost and found story that Dr. Rab's ever heard of?
Personally, it's my own dog.
All right.
And I just my little Renzo dog here. He's an escape artist. He likes to run away. We found him. Was it Bonnie? Is that you said? Bonnie?
Uh-huh.
Where did Bonnie say she was from?
She's in Austin, Texas.
Okay. Well, my dog came from Houston. So they're both Texans.
There you go.
Renzo came from Houston, but we got him off the street. So I don't know if he just has, for whatever reason, he just likes to run away. But he doesn't stay gone for very long. Stay gone for a few hours, and of course we get out and look for him, and he just comes back when he's good and ready. As long as we have some food, we'll jingle in the bowl. But I mean, you hear these crazy stories all the time. I think we've even had one on air where a dog, I mean, it took days for them to get home, and they even crossed a couple 100 miles, I think. So, I mean, you hear these crazy stories and they're true. But personally, I only just have my own dog to work with, and maybe he's been a mile or so.
Well, typically we always think that the dogs can see and recognize their surroundings and know how to get back home. Obviously, if they're on their feet and they're in the middle of a wooded area 5 or 6 miles away from home, is it safe to assume that most of those dogs will find their way back? Is it based purely off smell? I know when I take my dogs for car rides, when I'm pulling into Heatherwood, they know they're home. They get super excited because they recognize the streets, I'm assuming, or maybe they just know my directional fortitude in getting them back to the house. But what's the best way for an animal usually to get home, and how far away can they go and find their way back?
Well, honestly, I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that dogs can, I mean, they recognize their surroundings.
Yeah.
My dog knows, when we go to common places, he knows. He knows when we're getting close to our house. He knows when we're getting close to my office, and he knows when we're getting close to my in-laws' house, because we go, obviously we're at home a lot. He goes to my office a lot, and we go to my in-laws a lot. And when we get close, he knows. So I don't know that he recognizes as we're going.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's that smart, but I know that they recognize places, and they're better at recognizing places, than we think they are. And even the article that you shared with me earlier this week, Dogs can learn a lot, and they can learn different phrases. So, yeah, I mean, I think that they can recognize a lot of different places, and I think they know when they're getting close to those places.
Does it surprise you? You're listening to Darkside the Pooch every Monday's Darkside the Pooch. And by the way, I just got with my director of operations. We are going to decide to expand your show. We're going to start running it 4 times a week instead of twice a week, so you'll be able to hear Darkside the Pooch even more. And it runs every Monday right now at noon and 8, of course, on Spotify on our podcast platform, which is fantastic. Go back and listen to all the shows brought to you by Ed's Pet World. Does it surprise you? And I was mentioning giving my dogs a ride. Both my dogs, as soon as I say go to the car, they go crazy. They absolutely love it. I'm assuming they love it. Now, my smaller Havanese always ends up puking in the car, so I know that can't be particularly pleasurable for that animal, but he loves to take car rides. For the same way that dogs love to take walks, but then a half an hour into the walk, you can't get them to move off the leash because they're stinking tired or they want to roll around the grass, and it looks like they're miserable. How do dogs negotiate what turns them on and the behavioral aspects of, hey, this sucks. Why did I ask for this walk? Does that make sense? I know they want to be. I know they want to be with their owners, but I'm like, this is what you wanted. Now I can't get you off the grass. What's up with you? But boy, the next hour, man, they'll be ready to put the leash back on again.
I think they have a really short attention span, and I think that they get tired of things really quickly. I don't know. Maybe all dogs have, a little bit of attention deficit disorder. I'm not sure. But they do. I think all dogs, unless they, have a health condition that makes them not feel good, but dogs like to be outside.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of factors that go into how long they want to be outside. The weather is obviously one of them. If it's really hot or really cold, they don't want to be out long. Dogs, they're just like us. They may have a time of day where they're more tired than other times, or they're hungry, or they're thirsty. So I think it just depends on when you catch them, how they're feeling and what their energy level is. But I also think that their attention is, for most dogs, not all dogs. I mean, some dogs you could go on a 6-mile walk and they would be happy with that. They'd love it.
Yeah.
But not all dogs are like that. I think the majority of dogs have, they have an attention span that runs out before they reach 6 miles.
All right, Steve in Palmetto, South Carolina. Here's a new one. Said it's 103 degrees. His AC just went out. His AC guy showed up and said something's urinating on your on your aluminum tubing outside your AC, and it keeps burning through the wires. He discovered, of course, it was his dog who keeps peeing on his AC unit. This is the 3rd time it's gone out this summer, by the way. He said, will dogs always remark their own spots? He always thought the dogs overmark another dog's spot to own that area. And do dogs ever mark with their poop?
Yeah, they mark with their poop. As far as the urine goes, I think that they just mark whatever they want, whether another dog's pee on it or not. They're male dogs are gonna mark on things, but if his dog is not intact, and if he's had the dog neutered, especially if you had the dog neutered early in life, it may not be marking. Now, I mean, it could be, but if the dog's just going to the same spot and he's peeing a good amount, then he's probably just peeing, and he's relieving himself. And for whatever reason, he's decided to pee on the AC unit. But if it's little spurts, then that's urine marking. And that can happen even if a dog has been neutered, especially if they were neutered later in life. Maybe if they were neutered several or even many months after sexual maturity, that marking is something that can be a learned behavior and they'll never stop.
He is yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna conclude with, if things that you can do to try to keep them from peeing on things, the best thing you can do is put up a barrier, because the last thing you want to do, we talk sometimes about the electrical collars or the shock collars to use for behavior. Yeah. But in this case, the last thing you want to do is to accidentally teach the dog a negative connotation with peeing outside. Yeah. So, if the dog's going over to the AC unit, you don't want to turn on that collar, because he might say, whoa, every time I pee outside, I'm going to get shocked. So I'm either going to start peeing inside or I'm going to stop peeing altogether, or whatever. So a physical barrier there, or maybe some type of, I don't know, coating you can put around that would be better than trying to do like a negative reinforcement. Maybe you could do a positive reinforcement if he doesn't pee on that. Like, hey, go pee somewhere else.
Yeah. Have you ever?
A negative reinforcement in that case would not be a very good idea.
Have you ever heard of using citrus peels?
Whoa, no, I haven't.
He said that his veterinarian there locally in Palmetto said something about putting a bunch of, now obviously you'd have to eat a bunch of, oranges or limes or whatever you got. But he said citrus peels, if you put citrus peels, dogs hate the smell of citrus peels. They will stay away from that area. Have you ever heard that?
No, but I have now. And I bet they make like citrus sprays.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
I wonder if you could even make like a citrus spray. You could spray on something. You'd have to do it, repeatedly. You might have to. And eventually maybe it would teach the dog so you wouldn't have to do it more, you spray it a few times for a couple of weeks and the dog learns that he don't want to go over there anymore.
It always smells pretty good too. Dr. Rab Stewart, the Rossbridge Animal Hospital, Rossbridge Vet on Twitter, the Rossbridge Animal Hospital, of course, on Facebook, brought to you by Ed's Pet World. Their number is 205-208-0301, 208-0301. Check them out. They're fantastic. I take all my dogs there. And of course, James Michael Keats is getting his new Australian Shepherd this Thursday. So you'll have a new customer coming to the Rossbridge Animal Hospital later on this week. You'll take care of my boy, won't you?
Oh, it's very exciting. Absolutely.
Okay.
You know it.
All right. Carmen and Daphne said, why do dogs get so excited to eat the same food day after day, year after year, and when most dogs like a change up?
Dogs are really food motivated. So I think that anytime they can eat, they get excited, no matter what it is. And the second part of the question, I don't really know the answer to that. And I think that that's one of those questions where it's tough to know the answer because they can't verbalize it. Like, for example, we had my son's birthday party this weekend and we ordered a bunch of pizza. And so I ate pizza Saturday for lunch, Saturday for dinner, and then Sunday for lunch.
Oh, yeah.
And by the end of that, I could say, I'm done with pizza. Let's do something else. But the dog can't do that. And younger dogs seem to have a more voracious appetite, and they are less picky than older dogs. My dog now is 12, and he'll go through times where he may only eat one meal a day rather than two.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he is just older and he doesn't need that energy requirement. He's just not hungry. Or if he's tired of his food. I just don't know. But you want to be careful when you change food. Whether you are getting a different dog food or whether you're supplementing with human food, because one of two things or two of two things could happen. First of all, the dog will eventually train you that it wants new food, and dog food is not, it's not cheap. Yeah. So if you buy a new bag of dog food and your dog eats it for a few days and then stops eating it, and then you go buy a different bag of dog food and he eats that for a few days, and then you have found yourself catering to your dog, and your dog has trained you to get new food all the time. Yeah. So it can be expensive. But the other thing that can happen is they can get an upset stomach. The more variety that you give certain dogs, the more likely they are to have diarrhea or vomiting, because dogs just have kind of a rudimentary GI tract. Some dogs can eat anything and never get sick. Yeah. But there are more dogs that are they just have sensitive GI tracts. That's why you have so many dog foods that are classified for sensitive stomach and sensitive skin, because that's also a common ailment for dogs.
And I know there's like with the science diet, there's some of these things where a lot of people try to get these dog foods that their dogs won't get fat off of it. And again, I'm just saying cut back a little bit. If your dog's getting fat off of eating dog food and is not eating table scraps or getting in people's trash cans, it shouldn't be getting fat. And so they get like a science diet, but it doesn't really matter. They're still going to love the taste of that, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. These dog food companies, it's a big business, and so they try to make these foods as palatable as they possibly can.
All right, Julie in Tecumseh, and this is Darkside the Pooch. You can hear it live every Monday. We're going to add a couple of days here on Tony Kurre Radio, the TKR app, which is rocking. Thanks to tens of thousands of folks who listen every single week. And, of course, go to Spotify and search Tony Kurre Radio, Darkside the Pooch. You'll see a picture of my blue heeler right there in the middle of the Pink Floyd album. It's fantastic. And, of course, that was the idea of the artistic idea, if you will, of Dr. Rab Stewart, 208-0301, Rossbridge Animal Hospital. And we take all your questions, info@tonycurryradio.net. Julian Tecumseh said, if dogs are man's best friend, what's a dog's best friend?
Oh, I think it's man, for sure.
You think so? So it's a love affair, huh?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I think that it could be food. Yeah. Dog's best friend could be food. Dog's best friend could also be a toy, Mm-hmm. But I think that dog's best friend is man, more than anything else. Because when when a dog gets rehomed, they're very sad. When a dog loses another dog in the household, they also get really sad. Mm-hmm. So, I would say it's probably man number one, and then probably dog number two.
There you have it. Robert, you're going to love this. You're going to love this email. Robert writes that every time he gives his dog a belly rub, the pink lipstick comes out. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
And so he stops, and the dog obviously looks at him and is like, why are you stopping? Because it's probably a little uncomfortable, certainly for him, maybe not so much for the dog. He said, I know about the blue pill and everything else, and I've always heard that if one lasts longer than 4 hours, it's time to go see a doctor. Does that ever happen to your dog? And do dogs have ED issues?
Yeah, they can have what's called priapism, and that's why you have to call your doctor. It's called priapism, and you have too much blood supply to that area. It does not, it can happen to dogs. Their penis can get trapped outside of their sheath. And that can be a problem because you need to get that back where it belongs. Or it can compromise the tissue. Okay. So, but as far as like how it happens in people, it's a little bit different because that actual penis will get stuck outside of the prepuce. So we need to get that back in.
Yeah. Okay. So, and again, what kind of medicinal, what do you, what do you use to make that happen? And how do you know if your dog does have that issue? You just keep an eye on it?
Well, usually it's copious amounts of lubrication to get it back in the sheath.
Yeah.
Very rarely would you have to, do something like, and I'm really overstepping my bounds here because I'm making some assumptions about human medicine, which is probably very dangerous.
Yeah, this is great. I love it.
Yeah.
We have disclaimers. We have disclaimers at the top of the show. You're safe.
So many calls at my office today. I would assume that in people, you have to somehow get that blood to go away. And I don't know if that would be like pulling it from a vein, I don't know. Maybe we get a human doctor to call in, but in dogs, that's not really what you would do. That would not be your best way to get the penis back in. It's usually lots of lubrication and getting them calmed down, and then you can get it back in the right place.
That sounds like something I would definitely go to a veterinarian for. You're talking about what was it, the Maximus bulbus or the bulbus maximus? You're talking about a guy that tried to separate two dogs that were having sex, and I was like, "What's wrong with these dogs? Why can't I pull them apart? It's impossible to do." You're like, "Leave them alone, man." I had Vaseline the whole 9 yards. It was a mess.
Yeah, the bulbus glandus is the accessory sex organ that you're talking about.
Just in case and explain that again, because our two dogs were mating and we ended up having puppies, and it was a super blessing. But the one dog obviously seemed like she was in a ton of pain. And so I was trying to get my male dog off of her. And there's, once it's connected, it does not come apart.
Yeah. That's the tying up. That's called tying up. And, the dogs, it's when they're, in the middle of coitus, mm-hmm. and, they, and, instead they're doing it doggy style, but then once they're done, the male will flip around so that he's facing the opposite way from the female. And you have to give that time, because that's what we're talking about. The penis starts to shrink and then it slips out. Yeah. But you can't physically pull them apart. Mm-hmm. The bulbus glandus is an accessory sex organ that people confuse for the testicles a lot of times, because it's two symmetrical swellings that are kind of at the base of the penis. They're not all the way back where the scrotum is. They're kind of halfway between the scrotum and the penis. So people will mistake that. It's an accessory sex gland the same way that the prostate is an accessory sex gland, which the dogs also have. So, it just goes along with the whole reproductive system.
If your dog is an inside dog and it's not around other dogs and you keep a close eye on it, obviously, 16, 17, 18-year-olds will get outside the house sometimes when you're not looking. I understand they get out and do things they're not supposed to do. But is there any practical reason to have your dog spayed or neutered if you know it's not going to be with another dog?
Yeah. I'll start with females. They are very prone to mammary cancer if they're not spayed.
Okay.
And the more heat cycles they have, their chances of mammary cancer goes up by a decent percentage each heat cycle they have.
Really?
So, it's a double digit percentage. I think some of the articles will say, anywhere between 10 and 17%. With each heat cycle they have, it goes up by that much each time. Also, as females get older, if they are not spayed, they can get a really bad infection in their uterus. It can be life-threatening, and an emergency situation in some cases called pyometra. And the reason that happens is because when they go through heat cycles, their cervix is opening and closing.
Yeah.
Okay. So when they have an open cervix, if they get an infection through their vaginal cavity into their uterus, when that cervix closes, it closes off that infection's ability to leave the body. And so you end up with a tubular organ that is just full of pus. And the dog can become septic and die.
Wow.
So even if an owner is not going to have puppies with their female, we strongly recommend that they be spayed for those medical reasons. Males, it's a little, it's different for males. They are not at risk for terrible things happening. The main thing that happens to them is benign prostate hyperplasia. The prostate gets too big and they'll start urinating frequently and they'll start urinating blood. Same thing happens in people, BPH. So neutering them fixes the problem. It goes away quickly every time. You neuter them and the enlarged prostate goes away. The frequent urination goes away. The blood in the urine goes away. The painful urination goes away. Also, the testicles, if they're left there, into old age, they can develop cancer, testicular cancer. And they can get cystic, they can develop cysts in the testicles. Males it's not as big of a deal to leave them intact as it is females. Females can get life-threatening conditions if they're not spayed.
Yeah.
And males can too, but they're more like annoying conditions like the BPH. So there you go.
All right, there you go. Great stuff. Darkside the Pooch with Dr. Rab Stewart, Rossbridge Animal Hospital on Twitter, the Rossbridge Animal Hospital on Facebook, and of course you hear the show live every Monday. It's Darkside the Pooch. We're going to expand that. We'll give you some show details coming up here in the next few days on Mondays, and of course also on Spotify and TonyCurryRadio.net. We got one more question here. Toby in Birmingham has a Labradoodle, a 5-year-old, and recently had the opportunity to reestablish a relationship with his mom and dad. He wanted to take his pup, now 5-year-old pup, back to the breeders and thought it would be kind of cool to see mom and dad. He wants to know, did they know that was their son?
I think they do. I think that they, the smells that certain dogs give off, the pheromones, because those are, they're a little bit special for each dog, so I would say yes. I don't know that we ever really, I think that's another one of those questions where you would have to verbalize, and they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
But I think that the answer to that question would be yes. Because, dogs can pick up on scents and they remember scents really well. And I think that's how they're going to pick up on that, or the sense of the pheromones that the mother would put off more so than the male. I think that just from everything that we know about that kind of stuff, I would think that the 5-year-old would recognize the smell of the mother.
Hey, if you go to Ed's Pet World, you're going to smell some scents down there too, man. It's unbelievable because they got exotic pets down there, chinchillas and ferrets and tarantulas and caiman alligators and rabbits. They got bearded dragons. They have Amazon. They have birds that talk to you down there. It's unbelievable. Kids love it. And, of course, it's a staple here in the great state of Alabama. It's right there in Homewood. They've been in business over 47 years. And, of course, Seth also travels around the world. He goes to Vegas, everywhere, looking for one-of-a-kind toys. Probably 50-50 now as far as in pets and toys. Some kids just love going down there. You're going to find something down there you absolutely love. And, of course, they'll make sure you take care of the pets you get and the toys you get, collectibles, watches, Star Wars stuff, whatever. If you want to buy, sell, and trade, they'll do that as well. Check out Ed's Pet World. Ed's Pet World, one of our great sponsors here of Darkside of the Pooch. As always, Doc, fantastic show. We'll catch up next week, my friend.
Can't wait, guys.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.